Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, June 14th, 2019. Hope everybody had a great weekend, or a great week, I should say. We are now approaching the weekend, and so much to talk about over the week. Tonight, it's going to be not as much on the world news headlines, but we do have some important information to go over once again on this channel. Go ahead and check us out at thegrandsolarminimum.com, where we have our show links that are put together that Mari takes care of us for every show that we do live. We keep them here for convenience so you guys can check out the same sources that we have for the show. So all the links will be available here at our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. Let's jump right into it. Our solar wind speed sitting at 426.7 kilometers per second, which has dropped a little bit since this morning. We were in the 450 range at that point, coming out of some solar wind that had hit our Earth's magnetic field today. 6.1 density. And right now, let's go to SPACEWEATHER.com, where we have 0 sunspots to report to you once again. And that is still 26 days now in a row. 100 for 2019. So continuing the streak, taking a look at our KP indices, we're dropped down to a 1. Earlier this morning, we were at a 4, not quite geomagnetic conditions, but we did see a spark and an increase in solar wind. It never really got past the 400 kilometers per second in the upper range, I should say. But there is our blank sun, and let's take a look at our star on the motion SDO. There's a weak coronal hole right now that is Earth facing, and honestly guys, if you're looking here closely, just nothing really to notice too much, but just a lot of peppered, I should say, with coronal holes here in the front, small ones. They are now Earth facing. We do expect some kind of effect from these on the 17th of June, but not expecting anything too hectic. I want to point out real quick, as this stopped, let's put it back in motion. And a lot of times we could always see action on the eastern limb, but for sunspot reasons. But how do we know if we're dealing with coronal holes that are coming around? And usually when you see things like this, a dip in the corona, that usually indicates the slight possibility of some minor coronal holes. And right now, as you guys can see, we're not really looking at anything monstrous or anything coming around the bend that's going to create problems as far as geomagnetic storms are concerned. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at our star on the whole here. All the way around right now, guys, we are in the pretty much good to go zone when it comes to sunspots. There is a weak area that we might have to watch past the negative 90 mark for coronal holes, which is those edges that I was showing you, the slight dips. But other than that, the sun is beyond quiet at this point, unless we just get a last minute sunspot that develops on its own for no particular reason. But like I said, I was showing you guys on the SDO, the angstrom 193 angstrom, you could see a little bit of dip on the eastern limb edge of the corona. And here we see in the negative 90 that we possibly have, that's going to be our next coronal hole that we might have to deal with. It could give us some geomagnetic activity. Still a few days out on that, so we got plenty of time to worry about that. All right, let's get into some of these world news headlines. TSI is still not available to this, for us anyway, for me I should say. So we'll go right into our world news section tonight. Death toll surpasses 60. 9,300 homes collapse as heavy rain hits China. Heavy rain affecting southern and central China this week claimed the lives of at least 64 people and forced evacuations of 356,000. The region is affected stretches from Guangdong to Chongqing. According to data provided by China's Ministry of Emergency Management on June 14th, floods and landslides destroyed 9,300 homes and damaged 3.7 million or 916 million acres of crops, causing direct economic losses of around 13.3 13.35 billion yuan, but US dollars would be more around 1.93 billion. And a correction on the damaged acres, that would be 3.71 million acres. More than 4,300 people were rescued from the floodwaters. More than 20,000 homes in the southwest region of Yanqi are without power. A massive landslide hit a 390-foot section of the road in Huan City, Fujian Province, early June 14th, leaving one person dead and 2 missing. Guys, check this out. We can go without the music. And there is a person back here in the background wearing red shorts, and he better get the heck out of the way, and he does, fortunately, in time. But, I mean, that took no time. So there was a gentleman who was in one of these cars when this landslide hit. He was trapped inside. So this is the aftermath of what, after all the rain that we've had in this region. We've talked about this on several broadcasts now. This is kind of like an update. Since the start of the rainy season, heavy rainfall and floods affected 6.75 million people, according to the official data provided in June 11. This is down from 48% from the average affected population over the past 5 years. Direct economic losses to June 11th amounted to 10 billion yuan, or about 1.5 billion US dollars. Down 41% from the average of the amount of last 5 years. Again, thank you to watchers.news for the information. And we will leave a link, like I said, here at our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. And moving on to another world news, unfortunately, we're talking about the UK now. 2 months worth of rain in just 48 hours triggers floods, disrupts travel in the UK. Parts of central United Kingdom recorded double the amount of rain that typically falls during the entire month of June in just 2 days. In the 48 hours ending on morning of June 12, 2019, a total of 4.22 inches flooded Holbeach in Lincolnshire. The town receives an average of about 2 inches of rain during the entire month, and they got double that in just 2 days. Rainfall totals this time in Lincolnshire included 4.83 inches. Tetford had 3.9 inches, according to the UK Met Office. Hawarden in the northeastern Wales usually receives around 2.33 each June, but recorded 2.63 inches from the night of June 10th to the morning of June 12th. And as you can see, several areas did pick up 3.5 to 4 inches of rain across the UK. The number of flash flooding incidents continue to mount across the UK as rainfall totals increased, AccuWeather reports. And here we have some train tracks underwater, very common sight throughout the region. Several properties under 2 feet of water in Wainfleet after the river steeping burst its banks. And just unfortunate to see, I've seen Twitter and our friend Starman has reported a lot on this, talking about how awful the conditions have been. We were in an amber warning on the, I believe, Monday through Wednesday of this week. So we reported about it Monday. We warned about it, and unfortunately, lots of rain, lots of flooding. The Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue responded to more than 100 flood-related calls on June 11th alone. River Waring overflowed its banks and low-lying land, causing the roads to flood. And Horncastle, the level of the river Horncastle's Banks Road peaked at 4.36 feet during early Tuesday afternoon. Minor's flood stage there is 2.23 feet, so moderate flooding, still very high though. The M25 in Kent was temporarily closed in both directions after 2 sinkholes opened, according to the BBC News. Travel chaos also extended to railways. Many rivers throughout the Midlands, Wales, and England rose above minor flood stage, AccuWeather says. A total of 1.34 inches of rain was recorded at London's Heathrow Airport in just 24 hours, ending on the morning of June 11th. So we have train, plane, and automobile that was affected by all of the rain that we have received in the 48 hours, and those amber warnings were rightly so issued. So we'll leave the link in the description. We hope everybody is recovering from this. Just awful scenes now in the UK. We've seen these scenes in China, Japan, India, Turkey, Africa, Germany, northern Italy, France, the UK, of course, the United States, Mexico, Guatemala, Ontario, other parts of Canada as well. Australia, we've seen major flooding there. Iraq, Iran. This is in the last 5.5 months that we've reported on flooding to this level or worse. That's just a lot of precipitation falling from the sky all over the world. You would think that we're just going underwater right now, but that is due to cosmic ray influxes, the highest levels we've seen. And of course, I'm going to talk a little bit more about last night's broadcast as well, and we'll talk about why we're seeing such high cosmic rays and why we are seeing such crazy weather here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, guys.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right. So last night we had a pretty startling, in my opinion, revelation of what's happening with their solar cycles. NASA announced in an article, June 12th, that Dr. Irina Shively,
You butchered it, Jake.
4 times. Sorry, doctor. I do apologize. Anyway, we'll leave this information on our website so you can go check it out. She does leave an email as well. But Bay Area Environmental Research Institute, and also funded by NSF SHINE program, AGS 1622341. Solar activity, space weather, and technology. So this first part of the slide, and this is the person who wrote the article for NASA claiming that solar cycle 25 is going to be the weakest that we've seen in the last 200 years. So why does this person say this? Well, this presentation right here is going to give us the answers to that, or at least explain how they came to this conclusion. Take a look at our sunspot cycles. We all know the Maunder minimum very well. And then, of course, the Dalton minimum, which you see is not quite as a deep minimum as the Maunder minimum. And then now the Maunder minimum, which many people are trying to have it named the Eddy minimum, is approaching us. In fact, we're here. And this paper talks about it. This presentation talks about it. The evolution of global magnetic fields has been observed for 4 solar cycles. Here we have the butterfly diagrams. We've all seen these before. Notice how visually weaker they appear, not just in strength and intensity of image here, but smaller wings. If this is called the butterfly graph, so I'm saying the wings look a lot smaller than the 2000, 1990, and the 1980 era. Data assimilation approach allows us to obtain reliable forecasts by taking into account uncertainties in both data and dynamo model. We use the Ensemble-Kalman filter method. It allows prediction of future state of the sun by relating observations of the surface to the state of the solar dynamo inside. And here we got a bunch of NASA math for all you people out there that love this stuff. I'm not even going to pretend to recite this problem. This method worked well for prediction of the current solar cycle number 24. The prediction below was made in 2008 at the start of solar cycle 24. So here are the predictions that they were looking at for solar cycle 24. The white dots are the monthly sunspot data. I believe the red line is probably the prediction. So looking at what they predicted for solar cycle 24 was pretty accurate. And we all know how weak of a solar cycle 24 was. We've already talked about how it's been the weakest in 150 plus years. Okay. So here's how they came up with their 25 prediction. The method has now been applied to predict the upcoming solar cycle number 25. So we take a look at these two cycle spots here that were the northern hemisphere and the south hemisphere. And these numbers are tremendously much lower than what we saw last year at this time. I believe from a respected solar physicist who everyone kind of got behind and said, hey, solar cycle 25 is going to be about equal strength of solar cycle 24 or slightly above at max. What we're seeing here, folks, is beyond more than 50% lower solar activity than what we've seen in solar cycle 24. Plain and simple. So yesterday we talked about NASA confirming the grand solar minimum for the cycle 25. We are now entering the grand solar minimum. When you make a claim that we haven't seen cycles this week in 200 years or so, we all know how grand solar minimums work. They're every 200 years or so, 200 to 206 tops. We're right on schedule, guys. So not only did NASA release that we are in a grand solar minimum without coming out and saying it. I mean, folks that follow this theory, all you have to do is connect the dots, guys. And that's why we're doing this tonight. We're trying to help you guys connect the dots. Now, this scientist is being supported right now by NASA. And I've read several papers on NASA that talks about man-made global warming. I've read several papers on NASA that talks about, not heading into a grand solar minimum. This changes everything. And on top of that, we have Zarkova's work who's getting ready to come out. And we're going to be able to dissect that as well. And it'll be interesting to, now that we know that NASA is confirming one form of the dynamo model, it'll be interesting now how much more widely accepted her work will be, especially just being peer-reviewed and accepted.
She has the double dynamo.
So she has the double dynamo model. So, and we'll get more into, I'm not even going to attempt to act like I know how to compare right now because there is so much information that we still need to go over.
Using different layers of this.
And, Mari has explained to me in the background, thankfully, that she's using more than one layer of the sun. So very interesting stuff. And I'm anxious to see what kind of data we get in the future from the Parker probe. So I'm very, very excited about what's to come. But right now, still dealing with this. So this is how they decided to go with their prediction for solar cycle 25. They used the same method. They applied the method that they used to predict 24. And look how close they came on getting it right. Not bad. Not a bad prediction, especially for something, I'm telling you guys, this is huge research. This study is huge. This presentation of explaining why and how we're going to have the weakest solar cycle in the last 200 years. This is big news, guys. I got to be honest with you. I can't speak for Mari, I can speak for myself. I've been back and forth about when's grand solar minimum, when's it going to happen, what's going on. But to me, it's more clear than ever that 2020, the beginning of cycle 25, we are entering the grand solar minimum. And 26 and 27 and 28, I remember when I first started research, I was told those solar cycles would be just as worse. In fact, I also was told that 25 was going to be about what they are now predicting. And here it is. And I remember seeing a graph for 26, 27, and, you know, I think Mario would probably agree with me on that. I feel like that this upcoming grand minimum is going to be more of this than the Dalton minimum, just because we're talking about something that happened around the same time. Around the last time we got out of a minimum was 1819, 1820, okay, almost 200 plus years ago. So we are right on cue for the next grand minimum. Maunder, Dalton, modern. It's to me, this does a really good job for people that follow this topic. This is a lot easier, I think, for most of you to understand, because if you've been here for a while, you kind of have a grasp of this. So when we see this kind of information being posted on NASA, that's where I get excited. Now I'm trying to be as layman's term as possible for all you newbies out there as well, because again, I'm no expert, but what this is saying, this is the reason why this study was done, why they came out and said that the solar cycle we're heading into is going to be the weakest in the last 200 years. This presentation is showing us why. It goes on to read that the results show that the next solar cycle will start in 2020, reach its max by 2025. Again, that's pretty puny. Cycle 25 is expected to be even weaker than the current solar cycle. So what we were told last year, where some scientists had a bug up their butt, didn't like that this sunspot theory was actually proving correct. We all know what this is going to do to anthropogenic global warming supporters. This changes everything. This is a complete game changer. Not just the article last night, but the actual fact that we are being shown why by this NASA scientist, why she thinks that this is going to happen next. And here is another simulation of what's to come for solar cycle 25. According to this forecast, upcoming solar activity will be the weakest in the last 200 years. Once again, confirming what they wrote in that article. And here we go. Conclusions. Predictions of solar cycles requires linking dynamo processes inside the sun to observe sunspots. This is very difficult due to our incomplete understanding of the physical mechanisms of the solar dynamo, and also due to observational limitations that result in significant uncertainties in the initial conditions and model parameters. Using the data assimilation technique, we have made a successful prediction of the current solar cycle 24 before it started. That prediction was made by using sunspot number data as a proxy for the solar magnetic field. The new approach takes advantage of synoptic observations of magnetic fields emerging on the surface of the sun to produce a more advanced and reliable forecasting method. For this work, we combine observations from NASA, space missions SOHO and SDO with ground-based data and the National Solar Observatory. Using the current available observational data, predictions and prediction uncertainties have been calculated for solar cycle 25. The results based on both sunspot series and observed magnetic fields indicate that the upcoming solar maximum of solar cycle 25 is expected to be significantly weaker, not average, not slightly above, not a little bit above 24, significantly weaker than that of the current cycle, which near its end. The model results show that a deep extended solar activity minimum is expected in about 2019 and 2021. The maximum will occur in 2024 and 2025, and the sunspot number at the maximum will be about 50. with an error estimate of 15 to 30%. The maximum likely will have a double peak or show extended high activity for over 2 to 2.5 years. I just, to end on this, the fact that they're saying this is going to be significantly weaker, the maximum will be about 50, and that's about, it could be 15 to 30% higher or lower. A lot higher than what we saw in solar cycle 25, well over 100. Well over 100. The normal is solar cycle 23. Actually, it's probably closer to cycles 22 and 21, or closer to, that's what your normal max is, around 180 to 200. But we are well below that, folks. And that warming, those summers, I can't imagine how next summer, how we recover from this upcoming winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. I live in the Northeast, and I tell you, this information is, it's time to kick it in high gear, folks. When it comes to getting your prepping plans done, being ready for this, it's right here in our faces right now. And I want to thank this doctor, this scientist here at NASA, for putting together this small presentation to back up the reason why we are now seeing from NASA that this is going to be a significantly weaker maximum, not just by a little, significantly. That to me, and we can see it right here in the prediction map. It's almost at 50, almost below 50. And you see the little error rate here, the little bar. Let me go ahead and point that out just so you know what that looks like. This is what this little thing right here is the top of the error rate, and then down here is the bottom. So they're saying that there is a possibility that the maximum sunspot numbers for the maximum could be below 50. What's next after 25 and 26, 27, obviously. But from the information that I've looked at and everything that I've put together, and I think we're going to have a lot of clarity too when we speak to Dr. Zarkova here in the coming weeks. But a lot of things are pointing right now to this very prolonged period. And they even explain it here, that we are going to be in for a prolonged activity, or lack of activity, I should say, over the next several decades. So, again, I wasn't expected to hear not just the confirmation that the grand solar minimum is upon us, but it's confirmation that this could be a significantly long time of low solar activity that could go on for a longer period of time than was once expected. And again, Dr. Zarkova's work, we are going to get to go over that with a fine-tooth comb. I can't talk tonight. Good Lord. We will be going over it extensively before we talk to Dr. Zarkova.
You're doing good, Jake.
Well, I can use less of the peanut gallery. Thank you.
I'll edit it out for the next time.
You know, I guess I'm a little tongue-tied. This is a lot to absorb. Over the last 2 days, I've had a lot of time to think about this. And I remember in the very beginning of this channel, I had Ice Age Farmer on. We were doing a live hangout together. And I always kept saying, I was the guy that was rooting for the soft landing of this. I was the guy rooting for it. Christian, I remember his comments back when I said, I think this will be a soft landing. And I remember him telling me, I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. He didn't think that this was going to be a soft landing. So There's a lot of people that think that. There's a lot of people that think that this is going to become a lot serious situation than we imagined right before our eyes very quickly. A lot of people have thought that. We thought maybe this was just techniques to be clickbait or fearful. But some stronger concern now into those claims, especially when we see NASA, the one and only NASA, come out with this conclusion and supporting the work that we're seeing here. And also coincidental that Valentina Zarkova's work has been accepted as well in her peer review process. So a lot's happening, guys. And I said to Mari the other day, I said to her, where did you find, how are not more people talking about this? And, because she brings me the articles, so half the time, I don't realize the work she has to do. And she told me this was buried. You had to dig for this information. This was not just something on the front page of NASA. So it's buried. You have to know what you're looking for to find it. And we found it. And we're bringing it to you. And I think it's time, these last two videos we've done, last two nights, I think it's time to really analyze these last two shows, this presentation, this article, go over it yourself. And then think about everything that we've talked about weather-wise on this channel and what we've showed you on these graphs and previous minimums and sunspot cycles and the weather that happens during these periods of time. It's historical information right here and here. So we can't say, oh, it's going to be just like Maunder or Dalton. But what we do have is an idea of how things were historically and where we're at now and what we're due for. And a lot of folks are saying we're going to be due for a lot of low solar activity for a long period of time. Some folks said it was going to be like a Dalton-like minimum. I'm not so sure about that now. We will see. And we will also dive more into Dr. Zarkova's work as well in the coming weeks, and you guys will not be disappointed as to what is coming with that. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. So now that we know that our sun is going to go into a slumber, a deep one, green revolution, solar and wind produce just 3% of global energy. So where I'm getting with this is if we're only producing 3% now, what are we going to be producing in 20 years from now? Wind and solar energy generation is growing, but it's still an incredibly small part of the global energy mix. Meanwhile, fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, and oil accounted for 85% of the global energy consumption in 2018. In fact, BP reported that the U.S. led the world in oil and natural gas production growth. U.S. petroleum output saw the biggest annual growth ever recorded in any country, BP had said. In other words, the shale is booming. The U.S. surpassed Saudi Arabia and Russia in 2018 because the world's largest oil-producing nation. It has a link that wants you to go look at Democrats spend climate change hearing, avoid talking about the Green New Deal. Yeah, because it's embarrassing. Oil remains the most used fuel in energy mix, BP reported in its annual energy review. Coal is the second largest fuel, but lost share in 2018 to account for 27% of its lowest level in 15 years. So BP is coming out with a study that says that CO2 is at its lowest in 27% in 15 years. Output. Man's output at BP was 27%, its lowest level in 15 years. Think about that. And we all know that the parts per million is at 415. It was lower in 2006. It was lower in 2016. Carbon emissions are going up in the atmosphere at 415 parts per million, but yet BP says that we are burning less coal. Anyway, share of natural gas increased to 24%, such the gap between coal and gas has narrowed to 3 percentage points. The contribution of hydro and nuclear remained relatively flat in 2018 at 7 and 4% respectively. Strong growth pushed up renewables to share about 4%. So BP breaks it down for us. 27% in the coal, 24% in the natural gas. And then you have small shares of hydro, 7% and 4%. And then down here at the bottom is renewable shares. Renewable energy generated from wind, geothermal resources, solar, biomass, and waste. China is the world's largest renewable energy producer, but also uses the most fossil fuels. The two biggest sources of renewable energy, wind and solar, only produced 3% of global energy in 2018. Wind, solar has basically grown rapidly in recent years, but it's not enough to keep greenhouse emissions from rising because it's not us that's doing it. I have to include that. Limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial times would cost as much as $122 trillion by 2050. That's the down payment, folks. That's not the total cost. The United Nations estimated in 2018. Politicians and environmentalists are pushing for the 1.5 degree goal, but energy experts and economists are skeptical. BP estimates carbon dioxide emissions jumped 2% in 2018. That's the fastest growth rate in 7 years. BP's estimate is less than 3.7 increase in emission projected by the Global Carbon Project late in 2018. So emissions rose on higher energy demand. The oil giant mostly attributed to the jump in demand to extreme weather in North America and Asia. Remember the cold last winter, record cold that is. Demand for natural gas grew nearly 2.5 times faster than for renewables, driven by U.S. and environmental policies in China to improve air quality. Coal's share of global energy demand is at its lowest point in 27 years, though its actual use has increased. And that's important to note as well. People know that if they want to stay warm, keep the lights on during some of these brutal winters. Coal is our savior, unfortunately, for all those out there who don't want to burn coal. I get it. You want clean air and clean water. I do too. But I think there's a lot of carbon capture technology out there that's helping us with that as well. And we're starting to show a decrease in numbers. UN chief poses for Time cover. Yeah, this one's funny. This guy here, he's standing on some islands, I guess, for Time magazine. And here, let me show you guys the image real quick. That's cute. I love it. There's the old Time. Well, it won't show us the image, but whatever. You get the point. Time magazine cover shows UN chief Antonio Guterres standing in waters off a Pacific island that is allegedly sinking into the sea, except scientific studies indicate it's not. Studies have found that most low-lying Pacific islands either remain stable or increased in size over the decades, including Tuvalu. One researcher noted that the loss of land is unlikely to be a factor in forest depopulation of this area. So Time magazine is jumping on the smear campaign of the lies of rising sea levels taking out Pacific islands and other areas as well. This alarmist. Now, by the way, scientists have proven that there has actually been growth on this chain of islands. Time magazine also makes a mention that Fiji's islands are going to have to be moved as well. I also saw an article, though, thankfully, someone's reporting the truth. It's funny because mass media, or mainstream media, I should say, wants to convince you that the sea levels are rising, it's eating up Pacific islands, and we're all going to drown, thanks to man-made global warming. But in reality, you go to weather.com, and there's a video about some Hawaiian islands that are actually reappearing. They're growing. So there's so much proof out there that geologists are telling us that these islands are growing, in fact, not disappearing. They're not flooding. They're not going underwater. Just more from that mainstream media who wants you to believe that you're causing all of these problems with the climate. And that's just simply not true. Shutting down Middle America and blue-collar workers. We talked about this a little bit last time when I was mentioning Dayton, Ohio not recovering from their economic loss with the GM truck and bus plant. And Another person left a comment about how they have acquaintances from Dayton that drive to Cincinnati and Columbus for work. Folks, that's an hour 15 to an hour 30-minute drive for most people from Dayton. So that's how bad the economic situation is. So imagine losing these auto industries due to your lawmakers, your people that you elect into office. They're shutting down certain things for policy and tax purposes and just money to put in their pockets. But here's a great article here on What's Up With That explains what happens to people when policies as obnoxious as the Green New Deal are put in place. This is an interesting number here. Nearly 350,000 German families have had their electricity cut off because they can't afford to pay their power bills. German families and business had to cope with 172,000 localized blackouts in 2017. The country has banned fracking, hydraulic fracking, and imports U.S. coal and Russian natural gas. Unfortunately, more than 3,000 elderly people die every year because they cannot heat their homes, and this is in Britain, exposing them to constant chilly temperatures that make them more likely to contract and succumb to respiratory or heart disease. The situation is likely to get even worse. In stark contrast, abundant natural gas supplies from the fracking revolution have driven prices down in the U.S., saving some 11,000 American lives each winter, according to the recent National Bureau of Economic Research. Multiple widespread blackouts over the past 3 months in South Australia were caused by elimination of coal-fired power, 52% reliance on wind turbines, storm grid instability, and inability to predict weather conditions or peak power demand. Again, more articles are coming out every day, guys, that are telling us right in our face. This isn't lie. These are, and what I like about What's Up With That is that they leave links to get to these numbers, where they got these numbers from, what articles, where they pulled this from. Guys, this isn't some blog spot here that's just giving a biased opinion. These guys aren't funded by big oil or anything like that. Actually, wasn't Anthony Watts recently received by the Heartland Institute, if I'm not mistaken? Anyway, point I'm trying to make right now is more and more we're seeing negative effects from solar and wind, and we read about how bad other countries have it by relying on solar and wind, how expensive their electricity bills and heat bills are now, and how 350,000 German families, I mean, they got some serious cold this year, guys. Serious cold. Serious hail this summer so far. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our weather section.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, so stormy week, stormy weather to jeopardize Father's Day, weekend plans in Northeast Ohio. Let's take a current look at our infrared satellite. Thankfully, the bulk of this moisture is pushed off into the Atlantic. We did see earlier today lots of moisture move across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Missouri. Guess what? That's reloading right behind us right now as we're speaking. So those same areas that had lots of moisture, once again, we'll see threats for showers in the coming days. Let's focus on Ohio and the Northeast. It seems like it's their turn now to get all of this heavy rain, flooding. Outdoor plans and sporting events will be in jeopardy as lightning risk downpours spread from Ohio Valley to the Northeast this weekend into next week. Saturday will be the better half of the weekend for anyone looking to spend time outside, most of the Northeast. Away from the St. Lawrence Valley and eastern Great Lakes, any rain or thunderstorms will hold off until after Saturday in the Northeast. The weekend will otherwise start on a warmer note with humidity remaining comfortable. Widespread highs in the lower 80s are anticipated from the West Virginia to Virginia, southeastern Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. New England should be breezy and pleasant on Saturday, according to the AccuWeather meteorologist Rob Richards. Temperatures across most of the region will climb into the upper 70s and lower 80s. Clouds mixing with sunshine, however, was signaled that the nice and dry weather will not be there to stay. A cold front will move across the northeast slowly this weekend. This is the second cold front in the last 4 days that the Northeast and the Ohio Valley has experienced. And it's June 14th. And my temperature reading today in my car said 64. But folks, that wind, when it blew, it definitely did not feel like we were in the 60s. More like a mid-March, early April afternoon, in my opinion. If we would have had a little bit of rain, it would have been pretty raw and nasty. So here we go. A cold front will move across the Northeast slowly this weekend. Showers and thunderstorms rumbling through St. Louis, Chicago, and Detroit can reach Columbus, Cincinnati, Ohio, Erie, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, and Syracuse, New York on Saturday afternoon. The storminess will continue to push eastward Saturday night and into Sunday as higher humidity surges northward. While the entire day may not be a washout, a shower or thunderstorm can disrupt outdoor activities for a fraction of Father's Day from Boston to New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Thunderstorms are expected to rain north of Richmond, Virginia, but residents will still have to deal with sticky conditions. That's due to all of the humidity. But check out the widespread flooding. Unfortunately, folks, if you're watching from the Dayton area, Salina, you are in that widespread flood risk for Saturday through Monday. And I tell you what's tragic, and this is the common problem across the United States right now, areas that have been hit with disastrous weather events like flooding or tornadoes are still in the cleanup process. And folks, I've just seen recent video. They're nowhere near done in this area from that tornado they had just a couple of weeks ago. So now they have to deal with the risk of flooding, unfortunately, in those areas. Pittsburgh's on that list as well. Some thunderstorms will produce locally heavy downpours this weekend. Worse than disrupting hikes, games, and barbecues, the heaviest downpours can trigger localized flash flooding. A few thunderstorms may also become severe with damaging winds. Whether storms become severe or not, all residents celebrating Father's Day outdoors are reminded to seek shelter as soon as thunder is heard. And it shows us the storm track into next week as well. Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, on eastward, New York, Pennsylvania, the capital region of New York, parts of Boston will see heavier weather and possibility of the chance of severe weather. A young man and woman were struck and killed by lightning fishing at Mammoth Park outside of Pittsburgh on Thursday, the first lightning fatalities in Pennsylvania since August of 2016. And it just goes on to read about the dangers of lightning and whatnot, get out of a storm. And I've said this several times too, guys. I've seen too many people out there taking footage of these storms and tornadoes. Get out. Get safe. Do not risk your life or your safety for footage or notoriety of any kind, because it's just not worth it. So let's go ahead and take a look at our GFS. First, let's take a look at the El Nino that's still kind of holding on right now. Very neutral to moderate El Nino at a 0.74, I believe, above baseline. Yeah, 0.71 above baseline. The North Atlantic has been struggling to get back above baseline. So we have cool waters still in the Northern Atlantic. And as of this moment, I mean, we're not even talking about any kind of disruptions at all with any kind of hurricanes, or even in the Pacific. We haven't even heard much from that as well. So let's take a look at our GFS outlook. And by the way, I just saw an article not too long ago that is going to improve the predictability on the GFS model better than ever. There's some updates that are being done to GFS, and I'm almost wondering if they're already installed, because I've noticed this year especially that as much as people trust the European and other models that seem to run a lot closer to the reality of what's happening, I have seen a lot better ideas, at least, from GFS models than the Europeans. Not saying the Europeans are wrong, they're pretty close too. There's not much difference in between the two. They're slightly different, but there are differences. And I think GFS is only going to get better from here. But taking a look, we already talked about what we're going to have over the weekend for Father's Day across the Midwest. The South gets a little bit of a break. Thank God. Most of this is going to be in Ohio to the northeast. Heavy rain in Chicago into the Great Lakes. Some shower activity across Colorado and then into Kansas, moving in eastward. Again, redeveloping as if the atmosphere reloads by Monday across the same regions, the Ohio River Valley, Tulsa, Oklahoma City. You guys are looking at some heavy rain early next week, along with parts of Arkansas and northern Louisiana. And boy, this just hangs out in Oklahoma, Tulsa. You guys, heavy amounts of rain. We're going to have to watch again for flooding, and it's going to be in a quick amount of time. It's not going to be a long-lasting event, but there's going to be plenty of moisture that falls. And this is where we get past to midweek next week, and we see the constant track of moisture running through Ohio Valley, going to the Atlantic states. Here's another system by June 20th. This is the third system. Finally, this is making its way up through the Northeast as well, but also track that we are looking at lots of rain near the Great Lakes. There was an article that I really should have read the other night. I'm going to have to break it out next week, talking about how much higher the Great Lakes are. But here we are next weekend. This is probably our third system that goes through the Ohio Valley, through the Atlantic states. This time, this system moves up to the Northeast. And GFS is indicating that we will see more rain across America's heartland, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, into Kentucky and Tennessee on next weekend, and just kind of just over and over in the same areas. Missouri, Wichita, Kansas City, heavy rain in central Illinois and southwestern Indiana, moving across through next weekend. And again, every 24 hours, it just seems like another part of the atmosphere is reloading and putting more heavy rain. And guys, all this heavy rain that's happening here, if we look, I'm going to have to focus in. I want to bring out my handy dandy arrow. Guys, watch all the moisture right here. I'm going to leave the arrow right here. Watch all the moisture that we see funneling into the Mississippi River. Watch. One storm system, 24 hours later, there's another weak one. Here's more rain here, more rain here. Moving forward in the future, more heavy rains affecting that same region. They don't need the flood. They don't need any of this. And GFS is really revealing some heavy rain. And guys, I'm going to stop it right here. This represents the jet stream right now. This is why we are seeing those cooler temperatures up here in the northern parts in the Northeast. This is why we keep seeing this moisture just coming down from the Northwest and pounding the same areas over and over again in Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Western Tennessee, and then of course the Ohio Valley keeps continuing. That's because we're seeing this jet stream, flattening out and then coming out and then dipping down a little bit further, bringing the rain into this. I mean, every area, the Midwest and the Atlantic states, is going to get their fair share of moisture over the next 2 weeks, no doubt. And there's North Carolina. Just as I say that, every section of the Midwest, the Northeast, and the Atlantic states, June 29th, they're indicating some heavy precipitation in the Carolinas into Virginia. And then, of course, we see this common nosedive moisture coming from the Northwest once again. And again, this is where our jet stream dip is going to be. So this pattern doesn't look like it's going to let up anytime soon. But what's interesting to watch is how much cooler it's going to get in the Northeast. Now, also, I want to point out that we are looking at a pretty significant heat increase as well to the south and the southwest, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right now, this is our current temperatures. As we move through Father's Day, it's going to be fairly decent everywhere across the United States. Some spots will be extra chilly than usual, but for the most part, I mean, we're looking at solid mid-60s to lower 80s on Father's Day. But the heat starts to come back here on Sunday in the south, all the way from South Carolina to Southern California. We are looking at readings in the 90s, and as we move forward into early next week, we have more 90s still appearing across the south. But again, the rest of the country, 60s and 70s littered all over the place, and it's June 17th. These are overnight lows right here for the 18th. And then we get into Tuesday morning, mid-afternoon. Here we go. Once again, the heat is on in the south. South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California. You guys in Florida, can't forget you. You guys are going to see the bulk of this heat over the next several weeks. The rest of the United States, I feel, is struggling to look at summer-like temperatures. The spots that NOAA and the weather.com have predicted to be cool for this summer, look at these. This is the area that we were talking about cooler temperatures. And look at it. We're seeing that. 60s and 70s. And it's June 18th. Keep moving forward. We will see more heat building up in the west and in the southwest. And there's that dangerous heat, that triple-digit heat in California. We got to really watch for that snowpack melt too, guys. But the heat isn't going anywhere starting on the 18th. Continue to see very warm temperatures in the deep south. Texas, I said this a couple broadcasts ago, by the 20th, you guys are going to be hot. Very, very hot. And that's typical down here. But these might be more like July, August temperatures for you folks here in Texas, as we're seeing some very, very high temperatures here for June, at least. June 21st. And then look at that, overnight lows again. We're going to be freezing in parts of the upper elevations across Idaho, Colorado, Montana. And so the hundreds will stick around in the south in the 90s. And just really, guys, unseasonably cool. Here we are, a date of Saturday, June 22nd. The high temperature in the northwest, 65 degrees. In the northeast, in Maine, it's 57 degrees. Upstate New York, you're looking at a high of 62 degrees. 62 degrees at June 23rd. Texas, you guys are going to be baking. Same with Arizona and Southern California. Deep South, I'd say you're about normal at this time. 80s, but then we start to see some heat kicking up again in the Carolinas and Florida and across the Deep South on Sunday, June 23rd. And this pattern will just continue to stay where we will see the bulk of this heat, guys, in the South. And the reason for that, the reason why we're seeing 90s and 100s, a lot of the areas that aren't quite as hot, we could also complement the moisture that we have on the ground to keep these temperatures down as well. But look at this. June 26th. I mean, it is going to be hot. Texas is about probably, I would say they're going to be breaking some records, in my opinion. With this heat wave is going to be here for a little while. Temperatures in the almost 110 range in parts of Arizona. Just extreme heat. And of course, by the end of June, we're looking at extreme heat across South Carolina in the hundreds, all the way across from South Carolina to Southern California. June 27th looks to be a hot one. And then look at these temperature readings here. Parts of Arizona, 114 degrees Fahrenheit. June 28th. And again, the daytime highs from Virginia to Southern California, just in that region, we're going to be in the hundreds. But look at that. We're cool, in my opinion, the Northeast and the upper Great Lakes. 60s and 70s for highs. Not even at June 29th. Parts of Ohio, 75 degrees in northeast Ohio and northwest Ohio. Detroit, Michigan, 74 for a high. June 29th. So all that heat, folks, that cold air pushing down from the Arctic is containing it to the south. And I'm not one to brag, but I did say we were going to see a hot summer this year in the south, in the deep south, and in the southwest. And that's where it's taking shape right now, so far. I'm not saying we won't see some heat waves in Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana. I mean, they'll come. We usually do get a heat wave or two. But right now, it's kind of shocking to see how temperatures are just moderately cool, and we're just absolutely baking in the southwest.
You're bacon?
Bacon. Like the Baconator at Wendy's. All right, guys. So that's my cue to wrap it up when I got the peanut gallery continuing their comments. Gotta love her, though, folks.
It's been a long day, Jake. I'm
really
tired.
It's been a long week.
We're both really tired, actually. Have you guys noticed? We've been putting out some
I've been tongue-tied so much today. It's not even
tired.
funny.
There's so much to keep up with. Hello, everyone in the chat. I promised Grant I'd give him a shout-out. He said shout out to Grant while he's driving back home from work. Listening
Grant.
Listening to the GSM about the GSM. So, hey, Grant, what's up? Rain, he's making a rare appearance. We haven't seen him in the chat in a while.
Hello, David.
He went down through farm country last weekend, and the corn's looking pretty sad. Brown stalks in the lower third of the stalks. So, yeesh. We got, it looks like Malcolm in Australia says they have the most snow on high country for the past 20 years. Someone was asking about Hello, Waylon, our puppy dog. Valentina Zarkova's peer-reviewed paper, asking about that. It has been accepted, and it's just going through final edits. It's still under embargo. You need to log in to see it. We'll be discussing that with her as soon as it's available to the public, which is probably within the next 2 weeks, I believe. We'll see. Let's see what else. I don't know, Jake. There's so much. Rain's brother moved from Wisconsin to Northeast Arkansas because of the weather. Yeesh. Feel sort of bad about that. Sorry to hear that. And then Ian's in the chat. He says places in the UK have been flooding that haven't flooded before, and he's convinced all his family in the UK to start growing food. So that is great that you have been able to actually convince people to do something. I find it quite difficult for my friends and family to grasp like the direness of the situation. So anyway, somebody said love you, Mari. Oh, hello. Thank you. Okay, Jake, that's all I have. The Teespring t-shirt store, we have free shipping, and I blasted that off on Twitter and Facebook. I'll put a link in the community tab also.
Free shipping only? That's it?
Right now. Don't be jerk.
Just trying to help out the common man, that's all.
The free shipping. I might have
that's
a special
good deal.
next month. I don't know, right. But it's there. I had that coupon code, and last month no one used it, Jake. People bought stuff, but they didn't use the coupon code.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So maybe I will get a new coupon code. I got to generate one. Maybe I'll do that. I'll post it tomorrow. You talked me into it, Jake. You drive a hard deal there.
Yeah, I am. I'm decent in the sales industry, I guess I should say. So, yeah.
So that's all I got. Do we have anything planned for tomorrow?
No.
We'll just break the show up.
Father's Day weekend. Yeah,
pieces?
we'll break this show up into 3 pieces for y'all tomorrow to kind of chew on a little bit and watch your favorite sections. So we will be off of the air Saturday and Sunday. Unless something major is happening, we will be in with any kind of breaking news. But our next live show is going to be Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And also Monday morning, be ready for the solar update report that we do Monday through Friday as well. That's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you once again for tuning in to this epic episode of the Grand Solar Minimum News. Ian wants my face on camera. Maybe someday, my friend. Someday. But
Happy Father's Day, everyone.
And I say thank you to watching the epic episode because of the explanation on why Solar Cycle 25 is expected to usher in Grand Solar Minimum conditions. It's all here, guys. It's all right here in our face. Take this weekend. Absorb this information. Be ready for Monday because who knows, we might have a live question and answer type thing going on in the chat at the end of the show. That's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Have a happy Father's Day weekend, and we will talk soon.